To this now, there seems to be no end in sight for the battle over the former Zambian President Edgar Lungu's funeral. The Pretoria High Court has halted the private burial that his family had wanted, with the Zambian government given until next month to explain why it wants to repatriate his body. Zambia's Foreign Minister Mulambo Haimbe talks to us now from the capital, Lusaka. Minister, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Can I start with what's led to this fallout between the late president's family and the Zambian government?
Thank you, Collier, and thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity to put our voice across as government on this unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in as Zambia as a whole. To your question, the issues surrounding this current impasse that we have relate to the interest of the family and to a large extent the political party to which the late former president, Dr. Edgar Lungu, belonged to, and the interest of the government on the other hand, and the wider interest, public interest of the people of Zambia. I think in a nutshell, that's how to put it. And keeping in mind that there is an active court process, so we are bound by the rules of sub judice, and so we'll keep our discussion with that in mind.
Yeah. Why is it important for the Zambian government to bury the late former president in Zambia as opposed to South Africa? And what do you make of the South African government's posture here? And that's simply to say it is obliged legally to respect the wishes of the family of former President Edgar Lungu.
Thank you again, Collie. First and foremost, we have to take this matter from the perspective of the status of the deceased, the late former president of the Republic of Zambia. This is the primary driver for the position that government has taken, not as an institution, as an executive, as it were, but rather as the key representative of the interests of the people of Zambia. I think that is what must be understood from the outset. And it must also be understood that as a former president, there is precedent in our country of 5 other former presidents or serving presidents of the Republic of Zambia that have passed on and who have been put to rest with the decorum that they deserve. And this is not only a position of practice, it's also enshrined in our laws. But very, very importantly, the courts in the Republic of Zambia have had to answer this question as to the status of a deceased former head of state. In the case of our first Republican president, President Kenneth Kaunda, whose family also put across their interest and their views that the late president be buried in a location other than the presidential burial site, which is Embassy Park in Lusaka. This matter actually went to court in the case of the People versus Secretary to the Cabinet, ex parte Kaweche Kaunda. And the court, in a nutshell, made a decision that the public interest overrides the family interests when it comes to a former president. And ultimately, rather than being buried at the location that the family preferred, which they said was the preference also of the late former president, he ended up being buried at Embassy Park. So it is a matter of not the interest of President Hakainde Hichilema as has been posited by some of our colleagues out there, nor is it a matter only of government as they put it as an institution, but the wider interest of the people of the Republic of Zambia. And there are also many practical aspects to this question. Yeah. The question begs whether or not, for instance, the majority of Zambians will be able to pay their last respects to their former president in the event that he's buried in the wonderful country of South Africa. Obviously, that is not going to be possible. There is also the question as to, from a practical perspective, the dignitaries, foreign heads of state that might want to attend the final resting ceremony for their counterpart, their colleague who has passed on, will the South African government be in a position to invite them? Quite clearly, the answer to that question is no. Will the family take over a government function and be the ones to invite these dignitaries and heads of state and pay and attend to the necessary courtesies for such an occurrence? The answer to that question is no. It leaves it to a formal function of government. So there are those practical aspects as well, aside from what I had mentioned earlier.
All right, two quick questions before we end the conversation, Minister, and I'd ask you to please be short. Why is the President, Hakainde Hichilema, why is it important for him to view the remains of the late president? Because that has come through in the court hearing that we saw this week.
Well, I don't think that necessarily we're talking about one aspect of his attendance being a challenge. It's not only the physical aspect of viewing, which is part of the ceremonial processes that are undertaken in the burial of citizens in Zambia. So where there is body viewing permitted by, of course, the circumstances, it is only natural that as part of the mourners, the president will equally body view. But I think the bigger challenge here that seems to be coming to the fore is that there are certain processes that the family prefer the head of state not to be part of or to undertake. For instance, receiving the body formally at the airport upon the arrival of the mortal remains. That seems to be a challenge. And our position as government is we are saying the head of state is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and this process is one that is one of military honors, and so it follows naturally, and as head of state in any event, that he should participate. Yeah. But let me be also very clear that this situation is not one where there are insurmountable positions. I think, as Ronald Lamola, my counterpart, my dear brother, put it in an earlier interview and has stated in public, on the public domain, it is important for this particular time frame that has been given by the courts to be used constructively by the parties to possibly engage, maybe on a without prejudice basis, whilst the court process is still underway, and possibly find a solution. And the Zambian government is open to that sort of engagement so that an amicable outcome can be achieved by the parties.
Very, very briefly, so how do you plan to reach that amicable position? Because you seem very intent that what is not going to happen is for President Lungu to be buried in South Africa, which is a foreign land.
I think, Colin, we need to be very clear as to what the intent of government is, and I will try to be very brief. It's not necessarily that we want to stop this process. We need to have the impasse, the standoff resolved one way or the other. And one of those is through a court of competent jurisdiction, which is what has been done now. A third party can speak to the issues and determine what the outcome ought to be. That is assuming that the two parties don't take this opportunity to sit down and resolve the matter. In the event that the court then says that the law and the positions put forward by the party are such that it could be either way, the burial should take place in Zambia, it should be respected by all stakeholders. Likewise, if the court then arrives at a decision that South Africa will be the burial place, then we would have discharged our duty, Koli, to the people of Zambia who want us to ensure that all these matters are dealt with. So we're looking at a neutral arbiter that will determine this question. And once that question is determined, either way, we as the government of the Republic of Zambia will respect the decision of the court. And let me also conclude by saying that it's not that we do not respect the wishes of the family. No. The issue here is that there are different interests at play, and some of those representing 20 million people in the Republic of Zambia. Those interests have to be considered. Whilst we commiserate and we mourn and we feel the pain of the family, unfortunately, there are bigger, well, maybe not bigger, but other considerations that are at play here.
All right, the Foreign Minister of Zambia, Honorable Mulambo Haimbe, thank you very much for your time.